Now, I want to move on to another type of consequence, which is punishment. So we are going to learn how to use punishment effectively.
You're going to be doing some lines for me today, Mr. Potter. No, not with your quill. I'm going to be using a rather special one of mine. Now, I want you to write, I must not tell lies.
How many times?
Well, let's say for as long as it takes for the message to sink in.
You haven't given me any ink.
Oh, you won't need any ink. Yes?
Nothing.
That's right. Because you know, deep down, you deserve to be punished. Don't you, Mr. Potter?
Another terrible example of punishment. Um, what kind of undesired behavior this teacher is trying to decrease? Probably lying. But do you think Mr. Porter would decrease the frequency of lying after getting this punishment? I don't think so. Let's look at the strategies, how you can use the punishment effectively. First and foremost, we need to be careful to avoid reinforcing undesirable behaviors. And I'm pretty sure that the punishment that you saw on the video would just reinforce Mr. Porter's lying. And you can also cue students when they engage in inappropriate behaviors because sometimes they may not be just simply aware of their behaviors. Reinforcing incompatible behaviors can be a very effective way of punishment. Ultimately, we want to not only decrease students' undesirable behaviors, but also increase students' desirable behaviors. So if you want to decrease students running in the hallway, for instance, then you need to reinforce students walking. So whenever students walk slowly, you can reinforce that behavior. The last point is very commonsensical, but sometimes teachers forget that we should use punishment wisely, appropriately, and humanely. We need to choose consequences that are punishing but not overly severe. We should also follow through with consequences. So many mistakes that novice teachers make is that they often threaten students, like saying, if you do that again, I'm going to take off the point, or you are going to be in a trouble. But actually, they do not follow with the consequences, which can signal to students that, oh, this teacher doesn't really do anything, and it would be okay to engage in undesirable behaviors. So, if you decide to use punishment that is rational and not overly severe, then you need to be consistent with using that. One thing that the teacher did well in the video is that she administered the punishment privately. And probably this is the only good thing that she did. And you should never say to your student, as a teacher did in the video, that from deep down, you deserve to be punished. We are learning about behaviorism and we are talking about behaviors, not the students. So we are trying to decrease the behavior, not to dehumanize our students. We should administer punishment within the context of a supportive relationship. so that students will not take it personally. The punishment tends to be more effective if students think that teacher uses this punishment for the sake of the students. Lastly, we should constantly monitor the effectiveness of the punishment. Let's say you scream at your students because your students talk loud in class. But if your screaming leads to even more noise and more talking, then you're actually reinforcing the undesirable behavior. So we should make sure that our punishment, that whether our punishment decreases the frequency of the undesirable behavior or instead increases the undesirable behavior. So far, we have been looking at reinforcement and punishment, and the commonality of these instrumental conditioning is that it happens after the behaviors. But rather than focusing on the consequences, you can look at the antecedents, which are factors present in learning situation that precedes behaviors or could impact the behavior. I mean, you can take more preemptive measures. So while these antecedents do not cause the behavior per se, it can definitely serve as cues or facilitate certain types of behaviors. And almost everything can be antecedent. For instance, people can be antecedent. Students behave differently depending on who they are with. So if they are with regular teacher, substitute teacher, principal, or classmates, the frequency of desirable or undesirable behaviors would change. Environment can definitely play a role as antecedent. How you arrange the room, how you decorate the room can also influence students' behavior. If students are sitting in groups, for instance, it is more likely that there are going to be more interaction, but at the same time, more noises. If your students are sitting in a row, then there will be less interaction and less noise. The materials can also be antecedent, whether it's book or lab equipment, all this kind of like artifacts, like classroom materials, they may lead to different student behaviors. The prompts, cues, and redirections can be served as antecedents too. For instance, if you're saying, this is really important, and that very saying can also serve as antecedents to lead certain types of students' behavior. Now that we have learned how to use reinforcement and punishment effectively, I want you to go back to the discussion activity that you did in the previous session and respond to one colleague by giving 2 suggestions regarding how to use reinforcement or punishment more effectively. If you think that there can be better types of reinforcement or punishment, you can also suggest them.